How often do you look at your own handwriting? When was the last time you really thought about the letters coming from your pen? Welcome to Time for Design, the design podcast for college design students by college design students. This podcast was created with the Fall 2023 Media Production course at Thomas Jefferson University. My name is Emma Prussian, and I am a third-year graphic design student here at Jefferson University. Early in my personal design journey, I found myself really interested in using letterforms expressively and in interaction with one another. What started as hearts over my eyes in elementary school gradually became curling calligraphy on Christmas cards, or 3-foot-tall Western letters on the set of my high school play. Little did I know this was the beginning of my journey with hand lettering. Hand lettering means creating letterforms by hand, typically in a way that allows the artist to be creative with the shape of the letterforms and how they connect. Since I did not yet have access to design software prior to coming to Jefferson, I was drawn to hand lettering as a skill, with its workbooks, calligraphy sets, and repetitive practice. It inspired an interest in typography and how nuances and details in letterforms come into play as I enter the field of graphic design. But I have not been the only one experiencing a hand lettering journey either. In recent years, hand lettering has become incredibly popular, especially on social media and in branding and logos for companies around the world. Today we will be exploring the interaction between handwriting and hand lettering in graphic design. How are designers influenced by their own experiences learning handwriting throughout their education? How does this affect their design choices? If we're getting technical, the Cambridge Dictionary defines the word hand-lettered as an adjective used for describing signs, etc., on which the words are drawn by hand rather than printed. But at its heart, hand lettering is an art form. The artist draws letters by hand and interprets them in creative ways. As a result, hand lettering is highly unique, with no two words being the same, because each artist has their own techniques and lettering styles that they like to practice. The immense variety of lettering styles encompasses a wide range of classic typography, from serif letters to sans serif forms, from scripts to bubble letters, and everything in between. Hand lettering's origins can be traced to the related art of calligraphy. The term calligraphy may derive from the Greek words for beauty, kalos, and to write, graphein. In the Middle East and East Asia, calligraphy has had a long and rich tradition as a major art form, like painting or sculpture. Beginning in the Mediterranean with early Semitic writing, the practice of script writing has made its way across territories with the Arabic calligraphy of the Middle East and the Indic calligraphy of the South and Central Asian countries in the later centuries before the Common Era. Hand lettering in Western cultures was easier for anyone to practice because of the planar letterforms of languages that originated from Greek and Latin. However, this does not mean that hand lettering and calligraphy did not have its place in the West. More elaborate and expressive hand-drawn text, like the hand lettering we know today, can be traced to the Middle Ages in Europe, in which books were most often religious texts handwritten by monks. These books, known as illuminated manuscripts, typically included elaborate drop caps and associated illustration to heighten the sense of story and majesty in the text. While the emergence of the printing press in Europe during the mid-15th century meant a bit of a decline in handwritten books, This did not mean that the decorative hand lettering of illuminated manuscripts disappeared. In fact, printing allowed for a greater distinction between normal handwriting and more elaborate lettering, so much so that words meaning calligraphy or other types of decorative script began to enter European languages by the end of the 15th century. Some documents continued to be written by hand for centuries, though, such as sheet music. But it cannot be denied that forms of printing and hand lettering have influenced one another, especially in the modern era. Hand letterers try to replicate the style of fonts made for print, such as a clean sans serif, while also adding their own imperfect twist. While modern advertising continues to use calligraphy, and designers are always creating handwriting or script typefaces to be used in digital or print work. As a student of Catholic school for most of my education, learning cursive writing was drilled into me, with hours per day dedicated to time in our writing workbooks and strict instructions on which writing tools we were able to use throughout our handwriting journey. But for many of my peers, and even my own sister, who had the same Catholic school journey 4 years later, their experience was quite different. In 2010, cursive was removed from the required curriculum standards for K-12 education by the U.S. government, influenced by the idea that learning a keyboard would be much more important in an increasingly digital era. Cursive, defined as any style of penmanship in which characters are joined in a flowing manner, has begun to disappear because the younger generation is unable to read or write in this style. But there has been much debate over whether or not to include cursive in modern school curriculums. Some parents and educators argue that the skill is no longer important because students are more likely to type than handwrite at all. But others argue that cursive is important for brain development and fine motor skills. But perhaps a more important argument for this side is what the ability to read cursive means. Important historical documents, such as the founding documents of the United States, are written in cursive. And if students do not learn cursive, they are unable to read these important documents, or other documents that may exist in the history of their family. Because cursive is closely linked to the art of calligraphy, and therefore hand lettering, the debate over whether or not to include cursive in school curriculums raises an important question for our topic today. What, if any, is the value of teaching students to understand hand-done typography and drawing their own letter forms? To help me answer this question, I've spoken to Mrs. Teresa Kramer, art educator at Archbishop Bryan High School in Philadelphia. I spent my own 4 years of high school as one of Mrs. Kramer's students, experiencing several typographic projects along the way, including an illustrated word, a series of monograms, and most notably, a word in linear perspective. That maybe we could talk about like your typography lesson and like the word, the linear perspective word, and like why you feel like that's valuable to do with your students.
Well, I'll do the best I can.
Okay.
I'll say that I was an illustration major in college, and we did have to take graphic design courses and a typography course. And I really did enjoy it. Like the illustrated word, we only had to do one, and I think I did like 6 or more, because I just had so many ideas, and I just thought it was a fun thing to do. And I liked playing around with letters, and I was surprised about that because my hand lettering skills really stunk right up until I was a teacher. Even I remember being a teacher, and people would ask you to do posters for them and banners, and my lettering was horrible. So I actually took a calligraphy class, and that forced me to, not need, I didn't want to completely embarrass myself. And it was so much practice and repetition. And now when I ask kids if they would would you like to learn calligraphy? They're all really excited right away until they see how terrible their calligraphy is. And I said, well, you got to keep practicing the L. You're going to have to do a whole page of L's just to get them all at the right angle and consistency. And then they don't want to do that. They don't want to put the time in. They love the way it looks. They love when somebody can fluidly do it and it looks so easy, but it's not easy. It takes a ton of practice. And
Yeah.
that's why even now I like to practice it with Christmas cards, or even if I'm just sending somebody a get well card or something, like, I better practice. And, even if a teacher says, oh, I hate to bother you, but it would be really nice if there was calligraphy on these certificates I want to give to, whatever group. And that's okay, I'll do it. And I don't mind doing it because I know you need to practice it. You need to keep that flow. But
Yeah.
the other lettering, just hand lettering was terrible for me. But the calligraphy course, I really feel like taught me about the structure of letters and the consistency of things.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that in general, students were just as bad off as me, horrible lettering skills. So to teach them a little bit, like if you remember when we did the word in perspective, I
Yeah.
had everybody practice the letters flat first, and I'd say, okay, start off, you're going to make a 2-inch by 3-inch box, make an X through the corners, find your centers, and then I would show them how to structure the letters. And we did the A, the B, C, M, S, and I threw an I in there so they'd have to learn about spacing and
Yeah.
how some letters, like an A next to a V, where you might push them together. Okay, now you've got your space all messed up. Or a W might need a little bit of extra space. Or a J, you might have, wherever you're putting, anyway, all
Yeah.
the spacing and everything, all the issues that you have to deal with.
So a difference that I've noticed between me and Lizzie is that I was taught cursive and she was not.
Really?
And she had it for like 1 year and then they phased it out. So I was curious if you've noticed, like with these lettering lessons, if there's been a difference with your students that you have now and your younger students versus students from like years ago, because these younger students aren't necessarily getting those like cursive lessons.
There very well may be. I do feel like there's a little bit of extra struggle
Mhm.
when we're doing these assignments, and a little less maybe even caring about it. Like, so
Yeah.
what? It's a little crooked. Where when you had disciplined teachers teaching you how to do your cursive writing and it was being graded,
Yeah.
then you cared a little bit more.
Yeah.
And now it's kind of a free for all. And I don't think they care too much about what their printing looks like.
Mhm.
So I bet you that's going to get even worse,
Yeah.
because I still have some kids who do cursive writing. But yeah, I bet you that is going to have a pretty big impact.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, more of a trickle down. So maybe I didn't notice it so much, so drastically. But yeah, now I'm going to start really paying attention a little bit more too,
Yeah.
and even asking them. Well, I do. I think the one time I do have them do cursive writing. You remember when I was talking about Leonardo da Vinci and how he would do his
Yeah.
writing backwards, and I said, so let's try that, and I demonstrate. When you handwrite your signature, it just flows right out of you, and a
Mhm.
lot of them would say to me, but I can't do cursive. I'm like, okay, well then I guess just do the experiment in regular printing,
Yeah.
but it wasn't the same because your signature just comes out of you so naturally. So that's one thing that I did notice with
Yeah.
someone saying, I can't do cursive. I never learned cursive. And I thought, what school did you go to?
Mhm.
But yeah, I had heard rumors about that
Yeah.
cursive writing situation, but I guess I never really took it that seriously.
Something else that we did, like with contests that we had, like the Christmas cards, the t-shirts, I remember that we would scan our things and you would help us put type in Photoshop.
Because all your beautiful artwork was destroyed by the terrible lettering.
Yes. Yeah.
And I still do that.
Yeah. So typically you do, if I remember correctly, you do the typography and the illustrated word and the word in linear perspective during art 2?
The word and perspective is art 2, and
Mhm.
art 1 was the monograms and the shapes and the
Oh,
illustrated word.
okay.
You remember that, right?
I do remember
Your
that.
initials and yeah, okay.
Yeah. So why do you feel like having that type lesson is important to incorporate with beginning art students?
Well, I think the
Then.
monogram design, I
Mhm.
think it's a really great creative problem solving um, project because people get so stuck in their head about the arrangement that they have to be in, where they don't know if they overlap or if they put the letter on top instead of below to fit in the shapes. And we had the circle and the square and the triangle and any other shape of your choice, how they could rearrange them and make it work,
Yeah.
and things that they might not even come up with, and that they all think they have to have rounded letters. And like, well, you can make it be an angular letter, or a G could look like a triangle. It doesn't have to be round or rectangular. And I think it makes them think a lot more about designing and composition and how to arrange things and how to just do something in a different way. Like,
Yeah.
oh, it never even occurred to me. Suddenly I realized that if I make this curve, that I can make this curve here, whatever it might be.
Mhm.
I think it's a good outside the box type of assignment. And I just think that the illustrated word is so much fun.
Yeah.
I think I have them do it because I love them.
Mhm.
I love seeing the fun things that they come up with.
Yeah. How many classes did you have to take dealing with type for
Only
your
the
illustration
one.
major
Honestly, for
class?
illustration at the time, it was only the one. There
Mhm.
are graphic design courses, but and there was text involved with those, but that was the only typography course I had to take. And part of that was back in the day when you had to do your own type fitting and typesetting, and you had to have your I know I have it somewhere, the special ruler with all the picas and
So I think my last big question is, since students can access so many fonts digitally, why do you feel like it's still valuable for them to learn like the actual structure of letters and things like that?
well, it is a lot like drawing.
Mhm.
And but except for that, most things that you draw, I think you can get away with a little bit of imperfection, but we're so used to seeing perfect letters
Yeah.
that if you're a little bit off, it's just all immediately looks wrong, whether it be the spacing in between them or the consistency throughout. So I think it's just discipline.
Mhm.
And I think if you can do that, then I think it makes drawing other things easier or better. I think it's still worth it.
Yeah, I'd agree.
And you have a lot of control over it.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
you probably do because I don't know all the digital programs. All the kids are working with tablets now, so they
Yeah.
can probably bring things in, trace over parts of them, and then manipulate them. So, okay, kind of the same thing. I've got tracing paper and a light box,
Mhm.
but yeah,
Yeah. I think that's something that they encourage us a lot to do here. I had a professor say, like, why do something digitally you can do by hand? Um, which I thought you'd appreciate, like, with
yes,
our
I do.
program. Recently, the use of hand lettering and script in graphic design has become increasingly popular. Some experts attribute this as a reaction to modernism and minimalism in design, because the hand-drawn quality and DIY nature of hand lettering feels very organic in response. Hand lettering's popularity can also be a result of a desire to move back to things done by hand, because so much of design is highly technical and digital. Hand lettering is primarily used for logos or packaging, but is becoming more popular in social media and advertising as well. However, because of the instant gratification of social media, many designers or makers creating hand-lettered works just to be shown on social media are not professionals in the field of typographic design. People may look towards hand lettering as a new hobby or a way to distress, and the abundance of internet resources or craft store workbooks will certainly help them do so. Instead, they are interested in the more artistic side of drawing letter forms rather than how these letter forms communicate. But the recent interest in hand lettering does seem to have an influence on digital type design now too. Variable fonts or existing open type features grant designers some of the customization and unique control over detail that they can get from hand lettering. With technology even beginning to adapt to this interest, there is no telling where hand lettering will go moving forward. While my own experiences in learning handwriting and hand lettering in my education have had a lot of influence on my own typographic choices, every designer is shaped by their own experiences and what sparked their interest, whether through forceful education or personal discovery. Regardless of a designer's personal style, learning hand lettering offers important lessons for all designers. Understanding how to create letter forms by hand offers a better understanding of precision and the practice needed to commit to this skill. This discipline in an analog skill can transfer to digital skills and reinforcing the need to continuously practice and hone in on whatever skills may make that designer unique. The creative aspect of drawing letters also encourages designers to think about how to creative problem solve, fitting letters into a shape, or combining them and connecting them to one another in a way they may not have previously thought of. When considering how to use hand lettering in their work, designers can look at a vast, rich history of hand lettering, from illuminated manuscripts to vintage advertisements to modern customized logos. This deep history can show designers how to practice hand lettering themselves and what styles they may be interested in. Understanding this will help them apply the customized or artistic aspects of the hand lettering they admire to their own work by also taking advantage of digital tools that will allow them to customize their type. Through an understanding of the art form, hand lettering offers a way to connect graphic designers to both the past and the future. Thank you all for joining me on today's episode of Time for Design. I would like to thank the Cambridge Dictionary, Encyclopedia Britannica, and AIGA's Eye on Design for their resources that aided in my research. Thank you to Mrs. Teresa Kramer for taking the time to speak with me about her own experiences both learning and teaching forms of hand lettering, as well as her role in my own typographic education. A special shout out to Professor Wright Seniores for instructing the Fall 2023 Media Production course at Thomas Jefferson University, and for teaching us all about photographic, audio, and visual production, as well as a fun course for the semester. Finally, do not forget to check out the other episodes of Time for Design that my classmates have created. Thank you!